Hello everyone, how are we doing? And welcome to Friday's edition of the DCU Daily. Let me read you a quote from Superman in James Gunn's Superman movie. I look upon my powers as a gift, not mine alone, but for anyone who needs them. Superman. Wow, wow, wow. I love this quote. This absolutely sums up Superman that we know and we love. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. But I've got a couple of more pictures that have been released for you. So these are actually stills, but these are actually from a live wallpaper. So look at this one. This one's absolutely stunning. I love the colours popping. We can see a little bit of the cape, but look at this. So the live wallpaper goes like this. You see, Clark Wright is about to change. Now, as much as I love Man of Steel, we never saw Clark changing into Superman. We saw him as Clark and then Superman. Do you get me? This is the traditional change. I'm assuming we're actually going to see that in this movie. I love that. In the first 78 movie, when he changes and he's looking at the phone box and all of that, it's so magical. It's one of my favourite moments of that movie. It's traditional. Look, there's some traditions you don't want to lose. Because if you want to kill everything that makes Superman, why don't you just create your own superhero and do whatever the hell you want? Well, I'll tell you why. Because the name Superman or any other famous pre-existing character, puts butts automatically on seats already. So, starts off like this, then it goes like that. I'm sure you've seen the live wallpaper. I tried to find it on Twitter so I could show it to you actually happening, but I couldn't. It's hot. I'm in a rush, so I couldn't be bothered to wait any longer. But that's what it is. So that is very, very exciting, my friends. Also, more very, very exciting news that we have now got confirmation that Superman will release in China, which is brilliant for its potential box office. But with every piece of good news comes bad news. Wait right there. So you remember that case that we thought was over? The one between the heirs of the creators of Superman and WB, Warner Brothers Discovery, where they filed a brand new motion. They want to take them to court again. It will be heard, the motion will be heard in June. So let me read it out to you. On behalf of the estate of Superman, co-creator Joe Shuster, and attorneys seeking an injunction to block Warner Brothers from exploiting Superman in the UK, Ireland, Canada, and Australia, where the estate is disputing copyright ownership due to the country's specific copyright laws. So they're doing it again. They've tried it once. The Schuster, or is it the Schuster? I think it's the Schuster. Basically, it's the heirs of Joe Shuster, the co-creator of Superman. They filed once. The judge denied that motion. So we're all going, right, that's over with. No need to worry about that. Or if you hate this movie and you hate Gunn and you hate WB, you were disappointed it wasn't going any further. So if you are a hater, if you are an anti, you'll be very happy with this news. I'm not a hater. I'm not an anti. I love DC. I love Superman. And even though I think that Jerry and Joe were done dirty, and I think it's disgusting, they're dead now, right? They're dead. And Warner Brothers did give them more money every so often, but not what they ever deserved. But every so often, they, here you are, here's a biscuit, go away and shut up kind of thing. It's a shame, but this is how comic book creators are treated. I don't believe this motion will have a different conclusion this time. When we go to June and a judge hears the motion, I believe it will be denied again. But again, I'll remind you, if the miracle does happen and the motion isn't denied, this is big problems. Because we're talking about UK. The United Kingdom is, it's very important, for American cinema releases. Ireland, still a big country. Canada and Australia, which is a huge country. So if this motion was to be granted, if the Schuster heirs were to win this case, it would be disastrous. But what are they really looking for here to stir the pot? just to say, you fuckers in historically fucked with my grandfather, my father, whatever, right? We're going to make life difficult for you. I think they want a payoff. They know this is not going to see the light of day. If this was to be something that goes on, it's a problem. It really is. And something like this could, again, delay the release of the movie. That's something that WB don't want. But by getting China, the China release, that's been important because China is so important. You could argue more important than the UK, Ireland, Canada and Australia, but every penny matters, especially when you're in the position of Warner Brothers Discovery right now, where their credit rating has been reduced to junk. So this is something that's going to have to, pave its course, and we'll see how it works out. But for anyone who's concerned about this, what I would say is I wouldn't spend too much oxygen worrying about it. I think it will go away. If it wasn't to go away, it would be very, very concerning. But we will see what happens. After I finished recording yesterday's video, I was thinking about Batman, the DCU Batman, the Reeves, the Batman 2, all these kind of, conspiracy theories about Matt and what's happening with this movie. Apparently, according to Humberto Gonzalez, who I wouldn't trust as far as I could throw, Matt's going to hand over the completed script to the studio by Memorial Day or on Memorial Day. We'll see what happens when it comes to Memorial Day, which isn't far away, by the way. But I was thinking that this issue, whether Pattinson should be the DCU Batman, is history repeating itself. Let's go back to the DCEU after Man of Steel. So after Man of Steel, basically the studio, Goya and Nolan fell out. They weren't, the studio blamed Goya for Man of Steel not making $1 billion. After all, it was his concept, his idea, his screenplay. So obviously it was Nolan who suggested him for the movie. So WB and Nolan weren't in a good place. But the reason that Nolan and Goya truly walked away was because WB wanted Christian Bale to play Batman in the DCEU. And they said, no, you're not touching our Batman. We finished that story. Leave it alone. Now, I can understand Goya and Nolan not wanting their Batman touched, but this was the dumbest business decision ever because WB was spot on. Ready-made Batman Bruce Wayne. The Dark Knight, probably the most popular version of a Batman movie ever. I mean, that movie is seen like the modern-day Godfather, right? Imagine the automatic money. Imagine a Batman versus Superman movie starring Henry Cavill and Christian Bale, but penned by Nolan and Goya instead of Chris Terrio, because we all know what happened with that BVS. I love BVS, but you need to chain people. People need to be answerable to people. You can't just make any film you fucking want. You can't make movies for yourselves. I know people talk about creative freedom, but you're still working with studio money. You have to answer to someone, right? And that was the issue with BVS. Snyder and Terrio weren't answering to anyone. And when Snyder doesn't answer to anyone, you end up with a couple of movies like Rebel Moon. I thought the first one was solid. The second one was total padding and filler. I was absolutely disgusted with the time wasting we had in the sequel. So unlike Zack Snyder to do something like that. I don't know what went wrong. I think that was Netflix's fault and not Zack Snyder's. And it looks like that franchise has been cancelled. I will keep you updated about that. Zack Snyder, DC, all connected, right? So, having Christian Bale in Batman vs. Superman, in a Batman vs. Superman written by Goya and Nolan, would have been a winner. Now, I'm not, I love Batfleck, I love Ben Affleck, but there's Ben Affleck and then there's Christian Bale, right? It's different gravy. So, the debate they had there and the decision to bring in a new Batman was one of the reasons they had many problems. Because ultimately, if Goya and Nolan are in charge of Batman vs. Superman with Christian Bale and Henry Cavill, that film wouldn't have had the problems that the actual Batman versus Superman did. And if we're all honest about it and we all have our objectivity, we will all agree with what I'm saying there. But of course you won't, because most of you don't have objectivity. Thank the gods I have. So let's go forward. Let's come back to present day. History is repeating itself. Should Matt Reeves' Batman, Robert Pattinson, be the DCU Batman? It's the same debate. Matt Reeves and probably Rob Pattinson are saying, no, we want to stay independent of what you're doing. Now, Zaslav has already said there will not be two Batmen, which is a very interesting statement. Now, I think privately, behind closed doors, I think there's been a tug of war whether Pattinson should be the DCU Batman or somebody fresh and new. Now, I don't know if they finally made a decision what's going to happen. Now, the interesting thing is that obviously the Batman movie isn't The Dark Knight. Obviously, it's a really good movie. People loved Pattinson as Batman, Bruce Wayne, but it's not the same as Bale's The Dark Knight version of Batman and Bruce Wayne. That's up there, right? And you'd say the Batman is a little bit lower, right? The Batman's a great movie. I wouldn't say it's the greatest Batman film. I don't think it had the same effect as The Dark Knight did. Let's be honest about it, but you can't compare the Batman with The Dark Knight because The Dark Knight was a second movie and the Batman was the first movie. So it's always important to be fair. That's why you can't compare the Batman's box office with BVS's box office because BVS was a sequel and the Batman was a first movie without any Superman in it. So when Snyder Stans was saying shit like, oh yeah, look what BVS made and look at what the Batman made. The Batman's a flop. No. When you make 750 million on a 100 million budget, it isn't a flop. End of story. No debate. I have spoken. Right? End of story. So there's that. But it's history repeating itself all over again. So the question is, what's the right decision here? Should Robert Pattinson be the DCU Batman? Should they have a second Batman? Should the Batman franchise just be cancelled? It's a very, very difficult decision. Now, officially, the Batman 2 is still happening. Officially. Now, all the stuff about the script and all that being handed over at Memorial Weekend, that's a journalist confirming that. So you can't trust this journalist anyway. I mean, he's got a good line into WB, but he's the kind of guy who would also, let's say, be an unreliable narrator for WB. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't trust Umberto Gonzalez as far as I could spit or throw him. Simple as that. And he's a heavy dude. He works out in a gym, by the way. Please, Umberto, I'm so sorry. But anyway, right, so I don't trust Umberto Gonzalez. The only thing you can rely upon is what's official. And right now, as far as we know, the Batman 2 is still happening. But it's had delays upon delays upon delays. And then there's this weird rumour about Matt Reeves not being very well, which I can neither confirm or deny. It's his business, right? But, I think this whole thing is about whether or not Pattinson is or was going to be the DCU Batman. From James Gunn's point of view and Zaslav's point of view, yes, they absolutely, and Safron's point of view, they absolutely wanted to amalgamate the Batman Reeves-verse with the DCU. There's no question about that. And they tried everything to accommodate Matt Reeves. They gave him a few production, credits on some DCU upcoming movies that are in development, right, like Clayface and things like that. So they've absolutely tried to accommodate Matt so he would agree to this. And I think clearly I think that Reeves is more okay with it than Robert Pattinson. I've said that before, but it is history repeating itself. And I think, can you have two different Batmen? We've had this debate before. It's a very difficult one to bring to a conclusion, isn't it? Ultimately, you do have Robert Pattinson there. He is a great actor. He is a great Batman. If you can find a way to marry the vision of Matt Reeves into the DCU, you can do it. What's actually going to happen, I have no idea. I still believe that the Batman will cameo in Superman. I guess we'll have to wait and see.